The sun hadn't even cracked the horizon when the call came in. A reported carjacking in an industrial part of town. Abandoned warehouses, boarded up storefronts, and graffiti-stained fences stretching for blocks. A place where crimes like that were easy to stage, harder to solve. Captain Brian Malloy grunted awake, scanned the brief message from dispatch, and cracked a smug smile. He didn't see it as a case. He saw it as an opportunity. Captain Malloy had spent the last few years crafting a specific image for himself online. Instagram, TikTok, even a carefully curated YouTube channel. Justice by the badge. Clips of dramatic takedowns, rehearsed monologues about community safety, and bodycam snippets edited to show him in the best light. His followers loved it. The media lapped it up. But the truth was, Malloy hadn't done real police work in years. He lived for the likes, for the viral bursts of public adoration. If he could be the face of law enforcement, the hero people reposted and praised, the rest of the department could clean up his messes behind the scenes. This latest call felt perfect. He could smell the narrative forming. Dangerous suspect, quick-thinking captain, justice served. All he needed was a face. Preferably one that fit the kind of villain social media wouldn't question. That's when he saw him. A tall black man walking briskly a few blocks from the scene. Dressed simply in jeans and a dark hoodie, earbuds in, seemingly in his own world. Malloy's cruiser crept up behind him, lights off. He radioed his location but exaggerated his tone. I've got a possible suspect matching the description. Black male, early 30s, acting suspicious. In reality, there had been no description. No eyewitnesses, no real evidence. Malloy was writing the story himself, casting the roles as he saw fit. He jumped out of the vehicle, hand already on his holster. The man turned, one earbud falling out. Can I help you, officer? The man asked, calm but alert. Yeah, you can start by putting your hands where I can see them, Malloy barked. You were seen fleeing the scene of a carjacking. The man raised his eyebrows slightly. That's not true. I've been walking and listening to music. I live 5 blocks away. Malloy stepped closer, eyes scanning for a phone, a wallet, anything he could twist into suspicious. What's your name? Darius King. Malloy tilted his head. Mind if I check your ID, Darius? Do I have a choice? No, Malloy replied, already patting him down. He exaggerated everything for the bodycam he knew would be chopped into clips later. The commands. The assertive voice. The half step back as if Darius posed a threat. Malloy's audience would eat it up. Look how composed he stays under pressure, they'd comment. Another dangerous suspect off the streets. Darius didn't flinch. Didn't argue. Just stood still and stared at Malloy with a gaze that wasn't fearful, it was clinical. Like he was studying the captain. After the forced frisk and detainment, Malloy radioed in a false update. Got the suspect in custody. Found a wallet that doesn't belong to him. Looks like he took it during the carjacking. He made sure the camera caught the moment he held up the wallet that, in fact, Darius had handed him freely and legally belonged to him. No one would know, not once the footage was trimmed and recaptioned for dramatic effect. The squad car door shut with a heavy clang behind Darius. Malloy could already picture the video. Title card flashing. Watch. Police captain takes down armed carjacker before breakfast. He was going to go viral again. But then, back at the precinct, things shifted. Darius remained eerily calm during processing. No protests, no pleas. When he was left alone in the interview room for a few minutes, he simply adjusted the angle of the camera mounted above him and smiled into it. Malloy watched through the glass, confused. He's cocky, he muttered to the detective beside him. Think he's got rights we don't know about. But when Malloy entered the room to begin his staged interrogation, Darius leaned forward with a quiet, deliberate confidence. Captain Malloy, he said smoothly, I've been meaning to talk to you. Malloy chuckled. Yeah, about what, exactly? I'm sure you've heard of Operation Sentinel. Malloy paused. That was a federal task force, but it had nothing to do with his jurisdiction, or so he thought. What about it? Darius reached into his back pocket. Malloy tensed. But what came out wasn't a weapon. It was a folded identification badge. One with the gold letters that turned stomachs cold. FBI. Darius King wasn't some innocent bystander. He was a deep cover agent. You've been on our radar for a while, Darius said calmly. We've been building a case on social media manipulation, abuse of power, falsifying evidence. You just handed us everything we needed. Malloy tried to laugh it off, but his mouth was dry. This is a prank. You trying to scare me? Darius didn't blink. No, Captain. I'm trying to end this. Outside the room, other agents were already in motion. Computers were being seized, bodycam footage collected in its raw form, not the edited versions Malloy had been uploading. Officers who had quietly complained about his behavior but feared retaliation were stepping forward now that the FBI had their back. Malloy stood frozen in the interview room, the fluorescent lights buzzing above him. Everything he'd built, his influencer career, his staged heroism, his curated image, was unraveling in real time. And the man he'd chosen to frame, thinking he was just another anonymous face to fit the narrative, turned out to be the one person who knew exactly how to bring it all crashing down. Darius stood and adjusted his jacket. Thanks for the performance this morning. Every frame of it is evidence. Malloy didn't answer. He couldn't. The camera in the room recorded every twitch of his jaw, every ounce of fear rising in his throat. This wasn't a viral moment. This was a reckoning. The days following the botched frame-up were tense within the department. Captain Raymond Ray Hensley had built his entire career on being a community hero, praised for his decisive leadership and charismatic presence both in uniform and on social media. He had thousands of followers who watched his carefully curated videos of community outreach, drug busts, and justice served moments. But behind the filters and hashtags was a man obsessed with notoriety. He had grown addicted to likes, shares, and public adoration, feeding on the digital applause that accompanied each of his posts. So when he saw a chance to catch an alleged drug dealer in the act, a young black man loitering in a known hot zone, he seized it, not knowing the consequences would shatter everything. The man he chose to frame wasn't just some unlucky bystander. Elijah Parks was deep cover, an undercover FBI agent assigned to investigate systemic corruption within the police department. It wasn't just a sting. It was a months-long operation targeting a suspected network of officers manipulating evidence, planting contraband, and abusing power for personal gain. Elijah had infiltrated from the ground up, living as a struggling ex-convict with a vague background and a low-profile job that gave him a street presence. His cover was flawless. No one, not even the good cops, suspected who he really was. Captain Hensley spotted Elijah outside a corner store, sipping an energy drink and scrolling on his phone. He looked the part. Tattoos, hoodie, tired eyes. Hensley told his patrol partner, "Watch this," before stepping out and approaching Elijah, his bodycam conveniently malfunctioning. Hensley patted him down aggressively, then theatrically pulled a bag of cocaine from the back pocket of Elijah's jeans. The whole thing was recorded on a secondary phone by a rookie officer Hensley had roped in, planning to upload the footage later with some self-congratulatory caption. Elijah didn't resist. He let the arrest play out, even as Hensley shoved his face into the cruiser's hood for added flair. Inside, Elijah's heart was calm. He had expected something like this sooner or later. What he hadn't anticipated was how brazen the captain would be. Back at the precinct, Elijah was placed in holding while Hensley reviewed the footage, editing clips and rehearsing his next viral monologue. But the FBI had been watching. They knew where Elijah was at all times via a concealed tracker embedded in his wristwatch. The moment he didn't check in, an alert was triggered. Within 2 hours, 2 federal agents in plain clothes were at the precinct, requesting access to the detainee and security footage. When Hensley tried to stonewall them, they quietly invoked jurisdictional authority and took over. It wasn't until they escorted Elijah out of holding that Hensley's world began to tilt. The officers greeted him with respect, called him Agent Parks, and handed him his real credentials. When Elijah turned and looked Hensley dead in the eye, saying, "You just made the worst mistake of your life," the captain's face drained of color. Within 24 hours, the FBI descended on the precinct with sealed warrants. Computers were seized, lockers searched, phones confiscated. Hensley's personal and department-issued devices were full of damning content, text messages bragging about cleaning the streets, voice memos suggesting evidence tampering, and even staged videos with young men who had been coerced into false confessions. Elijah's cover was blown, but his mission was accomplished. His wire had captured everything. Hensley coaching the rookie on how to fake the discovery, the casual racial slurs he threw around, and his sickening confidence in how the public eats this stuff up. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a systemic implosion. News broke within the week. Hensley's viral fame became his downfall as every post he'd made was dissected by media, watchdogs, and justice advocates. People who had once shared his videos with pride now saw them through a darker lens. How many of those arrests had been faked? How many innocent people had their lives ruined for the sake of engagement metrics? Hensley, once poised for a mayoral run, was now in federal custody. The rookie officer who recorded the setup flipped immediately, providing a detailed account in exchange for immunity. Several other officers implicated in Elijah's investigation were quietly suspended or resigned before charges could be filed. Internal affairs departments across the state were pressured to audit their own officers, and public trust, already fragile, threatened to collapse completely. Elijah, meanwhile, testified before a grand jury, then quietly disappeared into another assignment. He would not be interviewed on camera. The FBI released a short statement confirming that an internal affairs operation had revealed serious misconduct within the local police department, and thanked Agent Parks for his service. They did not elaborate. But the fallout was far from over. Community activists demanded full transparency. Several wrongful conviction cases were reopened. A citywide review board was formed to oversee future police conduct, with civilian representation at its core. For many, it felt like the first time in years that accountability was within reach. At the heart of it all was the question: how had Hensley fooled so many for so long? The answer, many agreed, lay in the illusion of social media. He had weaponized optics, turning policing into a performance, justice into spectacle. And the worst part, he believed he was untouchable. In the quiet of a federal holding cell, stripped of badges and likes, Hensley sat alone, replaying his own videos in his mind, wondering how it had all gone so wrong. He never imagined his downfall would come at the hands of someone he had dismissed so easily, someone he thought he could break for clout. But Elijah had been ready, trained, patient, and most importantly, he had been watching. Justice wasn't just served, it was recorded, cataloged, and preserved by the very man Hensley had tried to humiliate. And this time, the video wasn't going viral to celebrate a hero. It was going viral to expose a fraud.